Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. So what's your favorite coming-of-age movie? There's a lot of them, right? John Hughes made an entire career in the 80s, and I guess 90s as well, making the coming-of-age films. There's a bunch of them out there. Too many to name, probably. But this idea of, you're sitting on a character's shoulder for a certain period of time in their lives. What better time than coming of age? So like teen years, very, very like early 20s, perhaps mid 20s, perhaps. The coming of age idea, again, like you're no longer a kid, but you're not an adult yet. Pretty in Pink, I guess, is a good example. There's a lot of them, kids. I mean, a lot of movies like that. And look, the 80s weren't the things that, I don't know, I guess you could say maybe that was what the era that popularized it. We'll get it. Perhaps. It's possible. But, every generation has their coming of age films, right? And so I think that's what we're talking about here today. But there's a lot. 16 Candles, forgot that one. Breakfast Club. And look, this is not a John Hughes podcast. Everybody calm down. But you could actually say that this film quite possibly, is like a modern age John Hughes flick, except it's very R-rated with a lot of naughty language. It's Superbad. You saw the title. Superbad's super cool, man. This movie still rocks. I mean, it does. I really do still enjoy this film. We're going to get into it here today. Superbad is a 2007 American coming-of-age buddy comedy film. I like that. Directed by Greg Mottola and produced by Judd Apatow. The film stars, of course, Jonah Hill and Michael Cera, in the two primary roles, with a cast of pretty cool characters around them. We'll get into all that here today. And basically, this movie centers around a party, and they got to bring the booze. It's a funny flick, kids, trust me. Written by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. Produced by Judd Apatow. Of course, as we said, directed by Greg Mottola. The running time is 113 minutes. It was released August 13th, 2007. The budget was $17.5 to $20 million. The box office, get ready, $170.8 million. And that is your lowdown for Superbad. Phil, would you describe Superbad as being a modern sort of grown-up John Hughes flick, as I alluded to? And when's the last time you've seen this movie, by the way?
I can't think of the last time I've seen it, but I watch it pretty regularly. It's one of those movies that it gets better every time you watch it. Um, I don't know. Every time I watch it, I notice something different. Uh, and I don't know. Every time I see it, and I forget about the opening credits and how um, they do like this almost like blaxploitation opening with like the Bootsy soundtrack in the background. It's hilarious to me every time I see it. You got these two awkward white kids doing doing the silhouettes. It's hilarious to me every time I watch it. And it probably wasn't as funny the first time I saw it, but just now that you know those characters, it's funnier. Um, but yeah, I would say that it's probably like this generation's like coming of age movie because this generation is um it's not the Hughes generation. It's they have access to the internet. They have access to porn and a lot of the other stuff that we see these kids talking about in this movie. So yeah, it just feels more relevant to kids now because these are kids with cell phones and the internet and all these other things.
You're right. It is sort of a modernized version of that because you're right. It is a different generation. Dude, I love stuff that doesn't fit. Things that just don't go together. Don't always end up going together. Sometimes it just doesn't work, regardless of how cute the producer tried to be or the director tried to be. But man, yeah, the silhouette, the dancing in the beginning, this soundtrack, which by the way is effing great, with these nerdy white kids in suburbia. It doesn't fit, Phil, but somehow that makes it fit, right?
Yeah, I think the I think the juxtaposition of the funk music throughout the movie, and this like very white movie, like, like I mean, just think about how often you see black characters on screen in this movie, but at the same time, the backdrop of it is funk music. It's just such. I mean, it's such a great juxtaposition that makes it even funnier. Um, like when they get off the bus, um, when we get the reveal of what Seth is wearing to the party, and they're playing the Bootsy record, busting out. It's hilarious every time I see it because it's not just that it doesn't fit, but in some ways it does kind of fit because it feels like this is these two goofy kids' attempts at trying to be adults and listen to adult music, what they consider adult music.
Mm-hmm. And because we said this is a more mature, like John Hughes film for its time. I mean, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg have worked together numerous times in the past. Not only this film, but Pineapple Express, This Is the End, The Interview, and Good Boys. Um, they worked together before. Judd Apatow has a big list of these types of films. I mean, the 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up. He was producer on those films. Um, I mean, you can say, and I'll bring this up. We're just starting on this episode. Uh, this film's pretty foul mouthed, dude. And I don't have a
Yes.
problem with foul mouth R-rated comedies. They're the backbone of this country. This is what makes America great, Phil. Is foul mouth R-rated movies. The foundation of the country is laid upon them, I submit. So I'm okay with it. Uh, could you make Superbad in 2023 and would it be okay? I just wonder. I mean, how offensive is this movie in your opinion? Or is it just something you'd expect from this kind of movie?
I don't know if you can make the same movie. I think the plot in itself of trying to score women by getting them drunk is a little problematic.
Mm,
Um, but it works because um, both of these both of these guys fail in kind of a wholesome fashion,
mhm.
and so I think on the surface the plot of the movie sounds more offensive than it really is. Um, and don't get me wrong, it is problematic, but I think it's less offensive when you watch the movie all the way through. Of course, we're in a generation where people don't do that. They don't read things all the way through or watch things all the way through. I have to comment on it immediately. Um, but the other part, there's like the other f bomb thrown around in here quite a bit. Um, it's still weird to see it in movies. Um, 'Cause it's just like an
Yeah.
outright gay slur, and it's like yeah, of course, you know people in real life that still say it all the time, but just seeing it on film is just kind of weird. So I don't know how well that aged, but I definitely think it'd be harder to make that movie today.
Yeah, and honestly, of the films that we've covered here before on the 6M that don't age very well, I don't think this one has a massive problem. I mean, you're right, it has moments, but on the whole, I think we've reviewed films far worse in terms of, man, this doesn't translate to the 2020s now at all. But like, I don't know, dude. Do you think part of the saving grace of this film was that both of these kids, I call them kids, both of these kids in this film, by the end of the film, actually end up being pretty good people. Like
Yeah.
deep down, they're not bad guys at all, right?
No, I think that you're watching two dumb kids that are, like I said, trying to be adults, try to do adult things, and I think the actual through line of this movie is actually pretty sweet. Like when you think about it,
Hmm.
it's a pretty sweet story to tell about. Because like I said, if you look at it on the surface, the plot line is it's two two high school boys trying to score and trying to get liquor uh to have sex that night. But the real plot line of the movie is two friends that have been friends for 10 years that are trying to cope with the fact that they're not going to college together, and by the end of the movie they realize they're going in completely separate directions.
Yeah, it's like they've been bros for a long time. He makes the comment when he blows up at him later in the film that they'd spent 3 years sitting around talking about nothing. Uh,
Yeah.
I wasn't. Did he mean like the years of high school is what he meant by that? Because you kind of get the feeling they've been lifelong friends.
I think he means high school. I think that he
Mm.
means that there's a clear perception of Seth that we get throughout the movie. That Seth sees himself in a certain way, but the rest of his school and people around him probably see him as a loser. And he probably sees it as like, no, I've spent all this time being friends with you and being a loser with you instead of being popular or having friends. All stuff that you think will matter after high school.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. You got friends in high school that once you hit college, you lost touch. Did that happen to
Yeah,
you?
of course. Like I
Yeah.
have friends in high school that I've never spoke to again after high school.
Uh,
Yeah, it's just that's what it is. Like there are people that probably like hated your guts in high school that probably like now if you see them on the street, they're happy to see you. Um, None of that stuff matters. We didn't have a whole bunch of friends in high school. That doesn't really have any bearing on how you live the rest of your life. But of course, when you're in high school, these problems seem like the worst thing in the world. And so, yeah, I think in that moment he was just like, "Oh, well, I wasted 3 years instead of getting a bunch of girls and having a bunch of these things that people care about in high school. Now I'm going off to college, and I don't know how I'm going to make friends or meet girls because I don't have you." That's what he was really trying to say.
mhm. Yeah, man. Like, I didn't have a ton of friends in high school. I was the nerd. I was these guys. Okay, to put it in context, I was these guys, except I didn't drink, and women wanted nothing to do with me, and I was terrified of them. So take out all that stuff, and my movie's pretty effing boring. To be honest with you, it's certainly not R rated. It's pretty PG, actually. So yeah, no, I get it, and like, and you know what, dude, going back to that coming of age theme that we kicked this show off with, that's part of it, right? Is like on your journey to becoming an adult, you're going to end up leaving people behind. And I think that the end of this film, if I can jump that far ahead real quick, the way they both look at each other over each other's shoulders and go their separate ways in the mall with girls is kind of a big statement on what's to come, right?
Yeah, eventually we all have to grow up and we all have to move on from certain things, and it doesn't mean you stop being friends with certain people, but all relationships and friendships eventually change. Sometimes for the better, and sometimes it just happens. Sometimes people grow apart.
Hmm. Let's talk about the cast. So the primary characters are Seth and Evan. I mean, no mystery how that happened, kids. As we said, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg wrote this film, so there you go. Jonah Hill as Seth. Um, Michael Cera as Evan. Let's knock them both out at the same time. I've got one for you. I don't think I've ever asked this before. Could either one of these actors have played the other role and it would have worked as well? Or do you think that Michael Cera, I asked this because Michael Cera, the perception of this guy is he's so normal and so sweet, so kind hearted that he's always the good guy and he's never cranky. Can you imagine them actually, though, in either each other's roles?
No, I just couldn't see it. I think Michael Cera is just so great at playing like this very awkward um man boy character in almost everything he's in, that I just can't see him being as lewd and outrageous as Jonah is in this movie. Um yeah, I just couldn't see it working. But that's what makes Michael Cera in This Is the End so funny.
Hmm.
Have you ever seen This Is the End?
I have. God, he's insane in that movie, dude.
Yeah, that's what makes him so funny in that movie. Um, but Yeah, I think we all kind of just see him as this guy that is just like you just want to think that he's this wholesome guy that means well. I can't see him playing any other character. I mean, my of course my favorite Michael Cera movie is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It's just one of the greatest movies ever.
Mm.
And so I just could not see him being like this, not being like this like bashful guy that kind of like like all shucks humor to him. I just couldn't see it. Yeah, they were perfectly cast. I think they're just such a great duo. They have great chemistry in this movie. Uh, it's crazy that they haven't done that much together afterwards. They did that one movie um, that didn't do that well, where they were like the cavemen. What was the name of that movie?
Oh, that's I forgot all about that movie. That movie may have came before Superbad. No, it did not.
No, it came afterwards because I remember a big selling point for that movie was that that was the first time these guys did anything together since then.
Year one.
That's what it was, year one. Um, and so, yeah, no, they have great chemistry together. It's kind of crazy that they've never done anything together since then.
Mm.
I don't think you could have picked any better guys to be the main leads of this movie. They're both extremely funny. Um, I think uh, I think Sarah nails the straight man stuff when he has to do it. When he has to be like the subdued guy next to Seth being completely outrageous. And Jonah is just great in that role too because he nails like the insecure stuff and the fits of rage and tantrums as well as like 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 all of the funnier moments too, like the embarrassing moments for him where he just tries to like brush it off and just be like ah. But yeah, no, they're they're both perfect in their roles. I think Michael Cera is actually very underrated in this movie. It's crazy to say that because I think most people are going to think that Jonah's the most funny guy in this movie, but there's so many things that Michael Cera does in this movie that are just so funny because they're like after the joke is over stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, bad. There's too many things to reference that he does after the joke is kind of over, and he just kind of has a quiet moment to himself. It's just so funny. Um, I don't know why I laugh really hard every time in that scene where he's playing a video game and Seth's trying to talk to him, and he gets mad at losing and he throws the controller down. And he's just like, ah, why do you make this thing if you can't win it? Whatever, man.
What about when he's trying to hear her on the phone and he can't hear, and instead of
He's
holding
like
the phone away from his mouth, he's like, stupid, he's just cursing the whole time.
he's just bubbling and cursing at the phone the entire time. You swear I slap you so hard.
And she's
Yeah,
like, that's rude. That's uncalled for. Yeah.
yeah, no, he's so funny. His reaction after he accidentally punches her in the hallway, and he's just kind of like staring off into space, like he has no he has no response.
It is. Oh my
When
God.
he even funnier when he's sitting in a classroom and he turns around and he's staring at her and he gets caught like staring at her boobs and she catches him and then he just like stops and starts like looking around like he doesn't know where he is.
Yeah. God, he's
It's so funny.
so awkward. Like he's perfectly captured the whole teenage vibe of just being this really awkward guy, right?
No, there are a lot of things that he does after a joke or after something big happens that is just insanely funny. The way he gets up and runs in the scene where they're getting ready to get arrested and everything's in slow motion.
Oh, love it.
The way he gets up and run is funny to me every time he does it because it's such an awkward run.
And God,
No,
he's like, I don't know if they sped up the film at all or if that's actually his speed, but that kid is booking it to run from those cops, dude. It's hilarious.
he's the fastest man alive. He's the
Yeah.
fastest kid alive.
He's so fast. Yeah, he's like completely out of breath.
Oh man, yeah, no, but and I mean, of course, Jonah is also funny in this movie as well. Seth is just there's so many things that he does as well that are funny. Like, cause again, he has to take on all of the most outlandish stuff to do out of those three guys, counting McLovin, and he does many things in this movie that are also funny. Um, but it's something about Michael Cera, man. That guy is just really, really funny to me, man.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if it's just his cadence, the way he talks, just how quiet he talks in certain moments. Just it's really, really funny to me. Um, when he's in the room with Becca towards the end of the movie, and she's like totally blacked out drunk, and he's like trying to like say you're pretty and all this other stuff, and it's so insanely cringe and awkward, and he eventually doesn't go through it, spoiler, um and she like blows up at him, and then he's just like, wait, did you call me a bitch?
Yeah. Dude, in that scene, not for nothing, she's got her shirt off and she's like going to get naked, like on film. There is nothing sexy about this scene at all because she is freaking hilarious. That drunk thing she's doing, dude, when she's trying to flirt with him in the midst of it, dude, I am like rolling. I'm laughing so hard. It's freaking great, man.
Yeah, listen, if you've ever been in that situation of trying to get a drunk girl to go to bed, not trying to bed her, as in having to have sex with her, just trying to get her to bed to sleep it off.
Right.
Oh my God, there is nothing more unattractive than a drunk woman to me. It's so horrible, man. Like they're so obnoxious and they're just so, and I mean she nails just everything about drunk women at the time. Like that's why when I hear people that are like, "Oh, that's, you know, getting a drunk woman to sleep with you." I'm like, "No, no, no. I cannot stand being around I can't stand being around drunk women. It's horrible." And I mean, that's not just a woman thing. Drunk people in general are bad, but
Yeah.
no, like this scene definitely kind of kills that myth about drunk women, because I'm telling you, being out, and that's another thing I hated about going to clubs and going and doing the bar scene. Yeah, drunk women are not where it's at, man. Not where it's at, man. They're not fun to be around.
No, they aren't. That's nothing to brag about for a conquest, for God's sake.
No, it is not. There, it's yeah, no.
Yeah, geez, I can't. I mean, no, that can't. And besides, it's not. No, but I haven't, right. But I get what you're saying. Being around them is like, all right, I'm gonna be in the next room. You need to just relax because oh man, this is not. This is bad. Yeah, I get it. So we've established that they're great together. I think you're 100% right. I think Jonah Hill's character, maybe Jonah Hill is an actor. He's able to do this. He rests at a 7, but he can get up to 10 real quick. And that happens a lot through this whole movie, dude. The way he's mannered, it feels like to me he's constantly yelling throughout the course of this film. I mean,
Yes,
and he's constantly giving Fogel, played by Christopher Mintz. Is it Plass or Ploss? I think it's Plass.
I
Christopher
think it's
Mintz
Plaid.
Plass.
I think
Yeah.
it's Plaid. Yeah,
McLovin. We're just gonna call him that because it's freaking epic. But like, it's almost like in Big Lebowski when Walt is constantly telling Donnie to shut the f up. Like through this whole movie, he's bagging on McLovin hardcore. He's like of the trio. He's the kid that just takes the brunt of it. Um, Talk about McLovin here, man. Talk about rounding out this trio of characters. They could have done this without him and just not had the role or made it somebody else or an adult getting the booze or whatever. I'm so glad they included McLovin because he's great in this film, man.
yeah. His first movie role. It says in the credits, introducing Christopher Mintz-Plasse. Uh, he's definitely the breakout star of this movie, man. He is he is tremendously funny in all of the scenes he's in. All the outbursts at him are also funny. I mean, just the way that just the way that Jonah yells at him and lunges at him when he's talking is just hilarious. It's funny every time. The argument in the parking lot about him going in to get the liquor, it's
Yeah,
hilarious every time I watch it.
yeah,
And yeah, it's just it's just how Jonah reacts to him. I mean, when he's sitting there like mumbling and rambling about what am I gonna do? This is a lot of liquor. And he's just like, what are you doing?
yeah.
Hilarious every time. But no, he's great. I think his mannerisms are hilarious. In the scene where he's walking down the hallway and he's following the girl and he's like just that walk he has going and then he just stops in his tracks and it just randomly gives it a time and then nails the line when they cut back from the flashbacks. Yeah, I told her what time it is.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, he's fantastic, man. He does so many lines in this movie, and he nails the delivery of it. Um, One of the funniest parts of this entire movie is how he walks into the party and he acts like he's like looking around, not paying attention to this girl, and then walks up, "Sup."
Yeah. Dude,
And
when he starts dancing with that girl from the hall to Casey and the Sunshine Band, dude,
yeah,
he's hilarious, man. It's great.
yes, that is one of the funniest scenes in the movie. Just him sitting in the corner drinking a beer, looking at her from across the room. Amazing, man. I also love that he out of those 3 guys, he wasn't the guy that came out with the plan to get a woman, but he came in and kinda effortlessly got this woman to go to a room with him.
Yeah, like it didn't take much at all. And
Yeah,
yeah,
McLovin's the man. I think that just that juxtaposition of and I think that's kinda the story of this movie of how it doesn't matter what people think of you in high school, none of that stuff will matter after you leave those walls. Like, I love the juxtaposition of, Seth has been giving him so much shit the entire movie, but then when you see him outside of those 3, people like him. Like, the way that the way that the cops really took to him immediately and they wanted to hang out with him, the way that, like I said, he effortlessly got this woman, like, no, McLovin's the man.
he embraces the name too. And I love when he presents the phony ID and they both lost it. But like, Jonah Hill's character's screaming at him in the parking lot and what is this and everything. Uh the vest is hilarious because Seth says you look like Pinocchio, and then Evan tells me he looks like
Aladdin.
Aladdin. That's it.
Like, man, that again, that scene is bust of them coming out of the bus to bust it out, and you can see him coming across the parking lot, and you can see the change on Jonah's face when he's looking at him in his vest. He's like, what are you doing?"
Oh man, and that what McLovin, not for nothing, like Michael Cera's character is, he's very insecure. Jonah Hill's character is pretty, nasty, and like he's only thinking about one thing. And McLovin is completely, supremely confident. He's got all the confidence in the world. Doesn't care what he looks like. Doesn't matter that he's goofy and that he's, looks the way he looks, sounds the way he sounds. He's like the most confident of the three of them, isn't he?
I feel like he's the most secure in who he is.
Mm.
Um, I mean, even when the first time we see him, he comes in a Wu Tang shirt, and he just I don't know, man. I love McLovin, man. I came away from this movie liking him the most as a character, but again, I just think that it's just this message of the movie, like this guy that in his friends group is the biggest dork. Like when he gets out of it and people actually get to know him, they're like, "No, this guy's actually pretty great."
Oh, it's so good. Dude, does he steal this movie from the two of them, you think?
I don't think that he does, but I do think that he, in a lot of ways, has some of the funniest moments in this movie, man. Again, that scene of him walking into the party to dance with that girl, it kills me every time I see it.
So good. Dude, this soundtrack is so on point. It is insane how good the soundtrack is. We recently did the Longest Yard. Again, a comedy, great cast, great soundtrack, and it feels like we're doing part two of it here. Um, look, on a side note, how many soundtracks can you actually remember versus how good the movie was? Isn't it so much cooler when we can get both on the same film? How awesome is that?
Uh, yeah, I think the soundtrack to this movie is great. I think it's great that they actually got Boosie to do like some original music for it as well.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think it makes this movie stand out.
Yeah, I love it, dude. I love it so much. Um, I just think it doesn't. A great movie doesn't necessarily have to have a great soundtrack, but buddy, when it does, it's just all much better. Let's talk about the two cops who, again, in the scenes they're in, are stealing this movie, in my opinion. Bill Hader as Slater and Seth Rogen as Michaels. You got Seth Rogen with that laugh. It's his trademark. Bill Hader is great. Dude, these two guys look like they were barely there and they weren't trying very hard. If you told me they didn't have any lines, they ad libbed the whole thing and the kids just played along, I completely believe you because they're so comfortable here. They're not trying very, it looks like they're not trying very hard anyway. What do you think about these two cops in this movie, man? Seth Rogen and Bill Hader.
I think they're hilarious. Um, Bill Hader is tremendous in this movie. So many things he does that are just hysterical. Um, when he flips out when McLovin runs, it's just so funny every time I see it.
It
It's
is.
like McLovin bailed, and then he comes in and finds him later in the movie, and he's just like screaming at him. It's hilarious. His whole story in the bar is funny. That when the walkie-talkie goes off, he's like, "Oh my God, we need help! It's so much blood!" And he just cuts it off. I didn't even hear it.
Yeah. I caught that. Oh, they're
Oh,
such bad cops. But like he makes the comment, he said, always take the calls at the bar because you'll probably get a free beer out of it, right?
yeah, we'll take 13 beers to go.
Yeah. And dude, the first time I saw this, I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute. Do these two cops actually believe that this kid is 25 years old and his name's McLovin? Of course, they let the cat out of the bag later. They admit to him, we know you're not 25. Your name's not McLovin. But like, they played along the whole time. Dude, it kind of felt like it could have went another way. This could have been a dark comedy and they were just messing with this kid and then did something really bad to him in the end. You know?
Yeah. As many times as I've watched this movie, at some point I realized that Slater and Michaels are kind of like a mirror of Seth and Evan. They're just goofy
Mm.
adults that never really
Yeah.
quite grew up. And of course, they took to McLovin because he's exactly the kind of person that they would hang out with in high school.
Mm. Good call. It kind of shows you what could happen if they continued hanging out together. That kind of makes sense. Oh, so good. Those guys, I swear. There's such a thing. I think there was such a thing at one time as Seth Rogen fatigue, kind of like Will Ferrell. He kept being in these hugely popular films, and then you're kind of like, all right, I don't think I could do any more Seth Rogen for right now. Give me another film in the meantime.
Yeah,
But the dude truly is a funny guy, man.
I think it's because he played the same character in so many movies.
Yeah.
I think it was after a while. Like, there's only so many times we could see this guy as like this stoner that doesn't want to grow up. And we see it in so many movies doing that. That it's kind of like, all right, we know that you're good at that character. So it is really refreshing. We get to see him do other things, and I think there was a run of movies where it was just the same character over and over and over again. And not to say that stuff wasn't funny, but it did kind of get to a point where it's like, all right, do something fresh. And again, I think that's what makes this is the end so brilliant is that all of these guys that were typecast as these guys in other movies got to play the exact opposite of that in that movie. But yeah, no, Seth is really funny in this. He doesn't get to do a lot. He actually kind of plays more of a straight man to Slater
He
here,
does. Yeah.
um, but he's still funny. But yeah, no, there's so many quotables from Slater that I quote all the time. I don't know why I think about it all the time when he's trying to shoot that stop sign. He's just like, "Yeah, you make this. We're no longer friends." And he's tying them the whole time, every time. I think of it all the time, and I actually quote that quite often.
Oh, so good. Those two guys together are great, man. So we got two comedy duos in this movie already. The ladies in question that all three of these young men are trying to impress: Emma Stone as Jules, Martha McIsaac as Becca, and Aviva Bauman as Nicola. Uh, Emma Stone continues to be great. I'm sure she's capable of doing something bad, but I've not seen it. She's just so likable and she's so trusting, and I just think she's awesome. Like, I just think she's a standout here. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. There's moments when it kind of feels like she's too pretty for both of them. Like in the real world, I look like Seth growing up as the fat kid. And if I'd been around to Emma Stone, she would have kept walking past Tom. I'm just saying. But she's great in this movie, man. What do you think about the girls here that we're talking about? Emma Stone primarily as well.
I think they all did a great job of kind of portraying different things. Again, I think if the point of this movie is to show you that, oh, you just think all of this stuff in high school is the greatest thing ever. I mean, even if you think about McLovin finally gets Nicola, or he finally gets to talk to Nicola, and he realizes that she's kind of stupid, for lack of better words, but he's just so obsessed with this idea of her and this conquest of her that when he actually meets her, he's just like, oh, what? Like, cause she gives the great line of, "Oh, you said you're 25," and then she's like, "How's Hawaii?"
Right. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, uh, I think if you would have told me at that time that Emma Stone would be the big star that she ended up being, 'cause really, you could say that she's ended up being the biggest star out of all of those young actors from that movie.
Mm.
Um, and I wouldn't have guessed that. I think she's really, really good here. I think she's really good at playing off of Jonah and kind of being this girl next door, but also like, um, kind of, I don't want to say seeming like she tolerates him because it does seem like she genuinely likes him. Because he does do very awkward things several times in this movie, and she's just kind of like, like when he tells that the joke in the hallway, and she just kind of laughs at it, and her friend is looking around like, oh, this guy's a dork, like like this guy.
Yeah, try pulling that joke today. I don't think it'd go over that well.
No, no, not at all. Um, but yeah, she's very good in this movie. The swerve of him getting ready to have this heartfelt moment with her, and then he um passes it out and accidentally hits her in the eye, and she just like yells out, "What the?" And it's
Yeah.
funny every time I see it. It's just the sound he makes when he hits her. It sounds like she got hit with like a baseball bat or something.
It comes from out of nowhere. I think that's why it's so funny. It's a weird, awkward moment that you don't expect when it happens.
Yeah, no, it's one of many really great swerves in this movie. Um, yeah, I think she's really good in this. I wouldn't have guessed it. Like I said, she'd become the big star that she was. Easy A is also a very good movie that
Mm.
came after. It's a very funny coming of age movie that she was a star of. Of course, she was good in those awful Spider-Man movies because she had great chemistry with Andrew Garfield. She went on to do a bunch of other things, La La Land and all this other stuff, which I've never actually seen La La Land.
Me neither. Yeah. I'm not much for musicals, man. It's not me.
Nah, I'm not a fan of musicals. But yeah, you look at her.
Although, if I could see Rogers, the musical, that would be fun.
Yeah, but yeah, you look at her in this movie and you just think like, no, she's Mary Jane. Why did they cast her as Gwen? Like she's
God,
a
so
redhead
dumb.
that ended up dating someone that was that was out of that was out of his league. No, she should have been MJ. I don't know why they didn't make her
And she
MJ.
wore a blonde wig, right?
I think she just dyed her hair.
Oh, did she? Jeez.
Or well, I mean, in most of the things I've seen her in, she's blonde. So I don't know. Maybe it's just her. That's just her hair color that she's going with now. Maybe she just dyed it and she just kept it blonde.
Maybe so. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. When that happened, I was like, "Oh, they're gonna do Mary Jane." It's like, no, no, this is Gwen. I'm like, what? She's who? Like, why?
Yeah, yeah. She is a natural redhead, by the way.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. That's like saying we can't do Superman and Lois in this film. Why? Because we've done it before. So it's Lois. That's his.
Yeah,
That's the other character in the Superman universe. It's Superman and Lois. Like, you have to do that. You have to do Peter and MJ. You have to. Like, what do you mean
yeah.
it's Gwen? Like, I love Gwen, but come on, man, it's not
Um,
the same character.
it's not. I think that they just want to do something different with those movies, so they didn't want to go the MJ route again. Um, and that's understandable. I did like that they made sure to let people know that Gwen was his first love and really try to build upon that. Um, they made some very interesting creative choices there, but I don't want to get into uh, the faults of the Amazing Spider-Man movies.
I don't know. We can talk about that book. How about when they gave Gwen twins by Norman
Oh
Osborn?
my God!
Like,
What?
what?
Uh, oh my God! The JMS run is one of those things that I debated for years about as a Spider-Man fan, as a comic fan. I think that people liked those first few arcs so much that they were more forgiving of some of the other stuff that he did. And Sins of the Past is one of the worst Spider-Man arcs of all time. It is
So
horrible.
bad. It's so
It's
bad.
so bad.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's so bad.
So that's your basic cast here, kids. We've rounded them out. We'll give a shout out to Joseph Lotrulio. I think is how you pronounce it. He, of course, is Charles Boyle on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He's freaking great in that. In this movie, however, he hits Seth with a car. Happens to Seth a couple of times in this movie. We see Dave Franco for like 20 seconds in
Yeah.
the soccer game. He's here and he's gone.
Why don't you go piss
Apparently,
your
Danny
pants again?
was that?
Why don't you go piss your pants again? He's
Oh,
like,
that's
no.
right. Yeah, he's completely unfazed by it. It's like 9 years ago.
Nobody forgets.
Yeah. Danny McBride apparently is in this movie, uncredited as Buddy at Party,
Yes,
and I'm trying to. It was it the big party where Evan is having to sing in front of those guys.
I think so. That all the stuff at that party is way funnier than it should be.
Yeah,
Um, um, no, but the guy that hits Seth with the car, I can't remember his name in the movie. But the guy that hits Seth with the car,
Francis.
Francis. Francis Francis has several quotable lines from this movie, and he's only in it for what, about 10 minutes, if that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's got the he's got the scene when he's in the car. He's like, "Man, yeah, she totally wants it, bro. Who's gonna give it to her? You.
Yeah.
That's who." or or when he gets into the fight and he punches the guy and he's just like, "Sorry, man. Tiger got out of his cage."
Yeah. Tiger Rabbit's cage. One of you guys could have sat up here with me if you'd wanted to. It's like, no, we're fine back here.
Oh,
Yeah.
I completely forgot. After he gives the line, "You, that's who," and he sits there for a while. Hey, are you guys in the MySpace?
Yeah. Oh man, he's so good. Are you a Brooklyn Nine-Nine fan, by the way?
I'm not. I've seen a few episodes of it, but
God,
I
dude,
can't say that I'm a fan.
if I deep dive on that show, I'll never leave the couch. I got hooked on that show. I think I got hooked on that show as it was in its last couple of seasons. I just found it on Hulu. And I'm like, I've never watched this. I'll give it a shot. Oh my God in heaven, it's so good. Like I just can't get enough of it. That cast is ridiculous. Um, Talented as well and funny. Oh man, it's so good. I can't say enough good things about it. Um, we also have Clark Duke here, who becomes a fixture in movies such as this later on. He was the guy on the lawn that says, "Man, Fogel's pretty bad, eh?" Right? So that's him. But yeah,
Oh
that
yeah,
essentially is your cast.
yeah, he does become a fixture on these movies. He also co-stars in a movie with Eddie Murphy where he can't talk for most of the movie. What's it? Thousand Words.
Hmm.
He's in that. Yeah, it's weird when you look at this movie back and you see all of the people that are in this movie that end up going and doing bigger things. Like just all these guys in these small roles that it's crazy. It's crazy to think about. It's also just crazy to think about how long ago this movie was. It's 2007. That doesn't seem like this movie's that old.
I know you're right. That is pretty crazy. We didn't mention Martin Starr, who's in this movie, and he's the guy on the couch that's telling him to sing. One of the guys telling him to sing. And in Knocked Up, he was one of the friends. And one of the best lines of that movie is that he's trade. They trade insults. That film's really good, by the way, if you haven't seen it. But Jason Segel's in that movie, and they're throwing insults at each other. They had that no shave competition,
Yes.
and he says he calls him late John Lennon. That's one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Late John Lennon.
Yeah. It's got Jay Baruchel. He's doing the no shave gimmick, and he's the long
Yes,
hair and the beard.
that's
Uh,
right.
yeah. That friend group of guys that Seth has made a bunch of movies with. Seth Rogen, not Seth the character in this movie. Uh, that friend group, they've made some really funny movies together. um,
Yeah, so good.
but yeah, no, that party scene, it just so many things happen in that scene, and it's such a small part of the movie, but hilarious. Seth dancing with the girl, the the blood on his pants stuff.
Oh man, what?
The blood on his pants thing, when I saw it, is just so outrageous and so disgusting. But it's
Mm.
so funny, his reaction to it. His line where he's trying to go, he's like, "Man, is there a line? I'm trying to get this Merlot off my pants."
And he says, what have you got? He said, what do you got detergent for? And it gets real quiet and he goes, I got blood on my pants. Like he knows he shouldn't have said it, but he said it anyway.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
yeah,
it's so good.
hilarious, man. Him in the basement trying to wash it off. Just his entire plan to put the beer in the detergent bottle. Which, please, kids, don't try this at home. All of these
Oh
you people that are
man.
doing like that Tide Pod challenge, and
What
listen,
a terrible idea.
you drink detergent, it's gonna go really bad for you. Don't do that. I don't care
Yeah.
how long you wash the detergent out of that bottle. You're not gonna get the chemicals out of this bottle. You're ingesting this. No, don't do that. We're drinking green beer like that. I'm sure all of those kids were throwing up violently the next day.
Yeah. Lasting repercussions for years to come, I would suspect. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
just don't do it.
Yikes. Yeah.
Isn't that an episode of King of the Hill, by the way, that they found out that the Alamo beer was making everybody sick, and it came out that it was tainted with like a little bit of soap, and that's why they were like having violent diarrhea and throwing up.
That makes sense. I'll remember that one, but yeah, I like that show as well.
But yeah, no, that the entirety of that, the fight with Francis outside is hilarious. The um, Evan singing to the guys in there,
So good.
hilarious. Again, Michael Cera is a gem. This guy, him trying to awkwardly make his way through the song, him singing the lines, and then like trying to like fumble his way through the parts where he can't remember the words. So
And they're
funny.
getting emotional. They're getting into it, singing it with him. It's so good. That's the Guess Who that did that song. And man, if you grew up, for anybody listening that grew up late 70s through the 80s, you heard that song a lot.
Uh, so again, if you watch this movie enough, you notice all of these small things, and it is like I've seen this movie so many times, so I notice all the small things now. Have you noticed he's singing for them in there, and then when when Slater and Michaels are called to break up the house party, which is the house party that they're at. That
Yep.
song's playing on the radio.
It's on the radio. Yeah, I caught
Uh,
that for sure.
Um, also, the guy that's working at the liquor store that McLovin's trying to buy liquor at ends up at that party because he brings them liquor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that guy because he hates his job, you can tell.
Yeah, but he just brings this big bucket of alcohol later.
Yeah.
Uh, and he's like, "We're gonna get up."
Oh, it's good. I don't think we saw enough of the girl working in a liquor store. We need to give her a shout out because man, I could have went to see a little bit more of her, and unfortunately, she had like 4 minutes and she was gone. So
African Jew.
yeah. So did he look like? Stop my hand. How tall? How tall was he? She's like whatever 5'10" is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. As funny as those party scenes are, those scenes, the first Seth going into the grocery store and having the daydreams about buying a liquor.
Right. It's
It's
so
hard to
good.
pick out which one is the funniest because the one where he helps the old lady is really really funny. But the one where he thinks that the he thinks the security guard is gonna just like kill him for picking up this liquor.
Yeah.
He's like, "Don't do it, son. I
Yeah.
don't have any choice." He
Yeah.
throws the bottle. He's like, "You killed her."
He throws it. The cop catches it. It's so great.
Catches it in one hand and it like just beans this woman in the back of the head. He's like, "You killed her."
He's like, the old woman says, "Have fun effing Jules tonight." And he's like, "Oh, I will." And he's like waving back at her. Oh my god,
Yeah.
it's so good.
Have fun finishing up the rest of your days.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Oh
no,
man.
great. But no, Fogel going in and clumsily spilling the beer out of the refrigerator, and then just kind of standing there. And again, he like Michael Cera does all these things after the joke that are just so funny. When a guy comes up and he's like, "Did you do this, sir?" and he's like, "No, but somebody should clean this up." And you can see him like trying to brush the liquid off the ground under the counter with his foot. Every time I see it, I die laughing. I'm like, "What do you think you're gonna do? This liquid is everywhere. Beer is spilling everywhere, and he's trying to use his foot to like scoot it across the floor."
Yeah, you're right. It's the stuff that happens post jokes in this movie. It's hilarious. So good.
Oh, yeah, no, it's so funny. And then of course, him getting knocked out by the mugger.
Right. Yeah, 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 yeah. God, man, that came from out of nowhere too, didn't it?
The guy punched him so hard. You'll never get that reaction back of seeing it for the first time and not knowing it's coming. Um, it was so funny the first time I ever saw it. Like I feel like that is one of those moments in the movie where there's several points in this movie. The first time I saw it, I was in tears laughing at it so hard. Him getting punched by that guy at the counter. It's definitely one of those moments where I was was still laughing moments after it happened because it was just so out of nowhere.
And what's cool is that this Mindy behind the counter never sells him out. Never says his ID is suspect. Never. She's too in the moment and says he assaulted the customer and then ran out. Grabbed the money and ran out. I'm like, all right,
Well, she was ready to sell him alcohol. She didn't
that's true.
realize it was a fake. She was ready to keep this transaction going. He would have walked out like nothing happened if he didn't get punched in the face.
Paper or plastic for this, sir? What can we do for you? Yeah, McLovin, 25 years old.
Yeah, no, that and them playing it over and over in the bar. Hi, my name is McLovin. I like some. Oh,
Yeah. And they thought he was great. I was like, oh man, it's great. That's classic.
oh
Oh, that's
man.
good. Yeah, that's good stuff. So supposedly, this movie, part of their inspiration for this, you'll never guess this. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Dazed Confused, and they actually list American Graffiti as being an inspiration. Also, this movie is loosely based on their time growing up in Vancouver in the late 1990s. and of course that's why Seth and Evan are the characters' names. Um, let's see, Steven Glansberg is mentioned in this movie. That was actually a real person. He was described it well. He's described as alone in the film because he's eating at the table having dessert by himself. And Fogel was actually a real friend of Rogan and Goldberg, so that's a real name. Rogan was initially slated to play Hill's character Seth, but due to his physical size and age, he played one of the police. Dude, this is not the same movie as Seth Rogen's trying to pass for 18 for crying out loud.
No, it is definitely not. I'm glad he decided not to do that. By the way, the Richard Pryor shirt that Seth wears early in the movie did not realize until I've seen this movie several times. I actually own that shirt.
Really?
Yep.
That's awesome. Because he's wearing that golfer's cap, that old style golfer's cap.
Yep. I the only time I've been African in my entire life, I would never forget. I was walking around and this guy stopped me and he was like, "Who is this man? Who is this man on your shirt?" It's like Richard Pryor. It's like a famous comedian. He was looking around like, I was like, "You've never heard of Richard Pryor?"
Wow. I mean, I thought people around the world knew who Richard Pryor was. Yeah, yeah, that definitely would have been a different movie. When asked where he wants to be dropped off, Fogel tells the officers to take him to 13th and Granville. That was actually a nod to Rogan and Goldberg's favorite all-you-can-eat sushi restaurant in Vancouver.
Hmm.
So there you go. This movie took 7 years to complete from early scripting in 2000 and filming from 2006 to 2007. And dude, this film was a insane. I mean, it did great numbers, actually. Great numbers. It was the highest domestic grossing high school comedy at the time. How do you narrow it down to that? But actually, 21 Jump Street surpassed it in 2012. Um, this thing holds up, kids, on Rotten Tomatoes. The aggregate score is approval rate of 87%. So yeah, it's still really up there, and that's good because this movie's good, dude. The plot to this movie is so insanely simple. The only thing you could shoot holes in, no pun intended, are how ridiculous the cops are, and the fact that Seth gets hit twice by a car and gets up and walks it off. But other than that, I'm okay with the plot of this film. So
Uh, yeah. Seeing him get hit with that car is just incredible.
it's both
It
times it just out of nowhere too.
Yeah, he does all of the he does all the physical humor in this movie very well. The part where he gets hit in the back of the head with that bat, funny every time I see it as well.
Yeah.
um, yeah, he takes a lot of brunt of takes the brunt of a lot of the worst things in this movie. He gets spat on, he gets hit by a car twice, he gets hemmed up by that guy in the party that he almost gets into a fight with. Yeah, he takes the brunt of this a lot. And again, if you want to look at me again saying that Seth and Evan mirror the cops, yeah, when the guy that spat on him when he was coming out of 7-Eleven spat on Slater, clocked him with clocked him with his billy club.
Man, straight in the face too, man. Are you kidding me? Oh, that's so good. Fogel, if that he apologized to him for blocking him from getting with the girl with Nicola. He said, "What can we do to make it up to you?" He's like, "Well, there is one
You
thing,"
cops
and
can't
they lead
hold
him
me.
out. Dude, that's the best moment of the film. And he's like, "Yeah, you pigs," and he's yelling back and forth with him. It's so good.
Meanwhile, they don't have a windshield on their car.
Yeah,
Can't hold me, stupid cops.
yeah.
So him coming in and screaming at McLovin is funny too. He's like,
Oh, it's so good.
McLovin, why'd you run? He was like, don't run. And then the woman goes run. He was like, were you trying to violate that woman? Is that what you were here doing? Were you violating that woman with your penis?
Oh man. I'm so glad the cops ended up not turning on them. I was really afraid something weird was going to happen. I'm glad that didn't happen, and I'm glad everybody ended up like it. Look, even for like this, there. I don't think there's anywhere close to being a dark comedy. There's nothing really dark about this comedy,
No.
but there's no guarantee in comedies you're going to get any kind of happy ending. I mean, you kind of hope things will work out, but there's never really any guarantee. It could work out in funny on a funny note, but somebody could be sitting in jail on the end of it. But they didn't go that route here. They just, wrapped up all the loose ends. You're in, you're out, you're done.
Yeah.
Nice little one-off film, right? I think everything was great here.
Yeah, I like all of the side stories that we get here. I mean, McLovin gets his own kind of happy ending. That McLovin is kind of star of his own side arc, side character arc. Um, um, yeah, him shooting the cop car at the end is always funny to me too. He's just like, yeah, tight.
Yeah, he spent the whole movie with the cops, man.
Yeah, again, I think the point of that side arc is to show you that no, it just doesn't matter who you're friends with in high school. You always be able to make new friends, and I think he realized the thing that Evan was afraid of, that he had to room with Fogel because that was the only person he knew, because he was afraid and he didn't know how he was going to make new friends.
Mhm.
And I mean, you kind of see in his side story that Evan will be fine. He'll be able to make friends. He's just worried because he's been in this bubble of high school for so long.
Yeah. Like, listen, we have to shout out the flip phones because everyone in this film had a flip phone. It's so weird to see now.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2007. I'm sure
Sure.
most people had a
Yeah.
flip phone at that time.
Oh my god. And my flip phone's the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life to that point, honestly.
You couldn't tell me that wasn't cool. I had like my the ringtones. Remember when ringtones were a thing on it?
Yes.
Buying ringtones, and when you
Yes.
flipped it open, it had a Daredevil cover as the wallpaper.
See, I had Manish Boy by Muddy Waters as my ringtone. And it was the opening few notes of that song, and I kept it for years. And I had an LG red flip phone, like the red and silver.
Yeah,
And I remember when the smartphones became a thing, and the one kid I was talking to at wherever it was, I got my actual first iPhone, just shook his head and he said, "Man," he said, "those flip phones," he said, "that one right there will last forever." And he was right. A lot of those flip phones last forever. Like they just take wear and tear. You could drop them, whatever. They're fine. Just keep trucking with them. And like, you drop your phone now, screen side down, that's it. Game over. It's done. Like if you don't have something on it, you're screwed. So shout out to the flip phone era. We hardly knew ye. So um and dude, in much that way, this film is sort of a time capsule. Take out all the flip phones, and this movie could be happening right now because there's not a whole lot in here. There are some jokes. You're right. There's some jokes here and there that are but like for the most part, I don't think it's bad. Even in this, I wouldn't say there's running gay jokes or anything, but like the last scene in the end where they're drunk and they lay down beside of each other in those sleeping bags. Had they been fully sober, that moment would not have happened. But like
yeah.
they're both wasted, right? And dude, you could almost laugh that off and say, "Well, this is goofy." But man, like the true emotion of those characters came out in that one little split second when they were telling each other they love, like "I love you" or whatever. Dude, that was very cool to wrap up this film, man.
But again, I've seen this movie many times, and if you notice that the overarching thing, if you watch the movie from the very beginning, everybody around them is telling them how horrible it is that they're splitting up, and they're just like, no, it's not. Like when his mother comes out and he's talking to him, which by the way, Seth's exchange with his mother is hilarious too.
It's so good.
Um,
He's hitting on her the whole time.
yes. So when she's talking to him in the car and she's just like, "What are you guys gonna do?" and they're just both like, "We're fine." And even when he's talking to Beck and he's like, "Yeah, what are you gonna do?" Like, because everybody knows that's his friend, like his best friend, and everybody else around them is like kind of like more upset about it than they are. And
Mhm.
their whole plot in this movie is, oh well, I gotta get a girl drunk to, because then she'll fall for me. And they inadvertently got themselves drunk, and they finally admitted to each other how much they really care about each other.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah,
all
it
this
took that
time,
long.
you could say that all this time their conquest was women, and then at the end of this movie you realize that no, these two guys really love each other. Like this is not, and not in a gay way. Like this is the, like these guys. It took all of this from them to really like look around and go like, oh. I love you. You're my friend. And it makes some of it, like I said, really sweet. There is humor to it, but it is really sweet. Like even when they're on the escalators and they're walking away from each other at the end, um, the song choice they put over it is great. Um, but yeah, I think this entire movie that these guys were trying to look for. Oh, I got to meet a woman. I got to meet a woman. It's just like no, man. The thing you're gonna remember about high school is not all these women that you got or all these friends you got. It's gonna be your best friend.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so I'm sure I have the answer to this. I assume of these two guys. All right. Well, there's three kids here. Who are you? Which one are you in high school? Are you more Evan? Are you more McLovin than you would have us believe?
No, it's definitely probably Seth.
Yeah.
No, it's probably
Really?
Evan. No, it's probably Evan if I had to. No, it's probably Evan because I was kind of quiet in high school.
Hmm. Same. I was introverted for a long time.
I definitely had a friend that was a lot like Seth. I know he didn't have a like the lunch box full of the penis drawings, which
That came out of nowhere too, didn't it?
that whole scene is just so it's so ridiculous, but it's so funny, man. I mean, even the build up to it of him just being like, uh, Becca, like he's so mad at her the entire movie. He just won't say why. Until we finally get the reason why. It's so ridiculous.
I love how they showed those drawings in the credits in the film.
Yeah, you get the one at the end. That's the three of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's great. Uh, yeah,
Yeah, I still like this movie. And you're talking about the soundtrack and how it's this cool funk soundtrack and nerdy white kids. Dude, the title of the movie. And then look at that poster. That poster is great.
yes,
Like Michael Cera's like a deer in the headlights in that poster, and Jonah Hill looks like he's clueless, doesn't know what's going on. Because in that
perfect.
Western shirt, he gets called Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash both.
Yes, yes. There's a funny line too. Slater has some of the best lines in the movie. He's so funny.
He does.
He was like, "Man, because you don't want a hole where your head should be." Wailing Jennings,
Yeah.
hold his hand. Hold
Yeah.
it like it's your sister, like this, this.
God, it's so weird. And like they were gonna pin it, they were gonna say that they jumped out in front of the car. Or that one pushed the other one out in front of the car. God.
We like a cigarette, McLevin. Yeah,
Yeah.
smoke up.
Enjoy it. Yeah. And they had him sign it. It's like, and then at the end of the movie, it's like, hey, sign this and say that the homeless guy, the drunk guy stole the car. And what's great is, didn't that burn up in the car?
Yes.
Yeah.
Um. Again, another moment where McLovin is just so it's just so unintentionally funny because it's just his mannerism, everything. The way he gets out of the car and he like flicks the cigarette, funny every time I see it as well. And you can see the look all over Seth's face where he's just like, Fogel.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Like
good.
it's almost like comeuppance for him picking on this guy the entire movie that after everything he's been through this entire night, he's at this low point, and of course, Fogel is behind the guys that are that are now harassing him. Hilarious.
Yeah, that's actually a nice touch. Yeah.
And then after all of this happens, he finds out, like, yeah, these guys are gonna be rooming together at Dartmouth. You knew I couldn't get into Dartmouth. He's like,
What's funny is if you've ever been to a comic convention, there's always those dealers that sell like the novelty badges and IDs, and there's always that Mulder and Scully from the X Files, and there's ridiculous Batman ID cards or something. There's almost always a McLovin driver's license right there
yes,
every time. I got to get one. You know what? The next con I'm going to is in June. I'm going to have to get one just to say I got it.
Fogel. We never should have had to hide our plans.
Yeah.
There's another funny Fogel line. We never should have had to hide our plans.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. How about
Or
when Seth is telling the home ec teacher, it's like home ec is so stupid. I mean, no offense, but I'm in here and I'm trying to do my best, and this is just terrible. It's dumb. I mean, no offense, and he keeps doing that stuff to her, like he's trying not to get in trouble with the teacher. It's so good.
yeah, he just keeps saying no offense, no offense.
Yeah.
Um, I can't remember. I've seen the teacher from this movie in a bunch of things. I've just drawn a blank on other things I've seen her in, but I've seen her in a ton of movies.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, she even has moments where she's. It's just a funny movie from start to finish. When Fogel's in there talking to him, he's
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, if you're not in this class, get out." Fogel,
Yeah.
hi.
She screamed, Fogel. Yeah, that's great. So
Seth, get
good.
off the field.
Yeah. And it's one of those moments where like Seth is like a loser, right? But on the soccer field, he wasn't taking crap from anybody. Like he didn't care what they said to him. And then he kicked the soccer ball into the stands.
You're gonna get that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Oh, that's good. Uh that scene, dude, where McLovin is walking through the parking lot with that vest in slow motion. He's waving, that big dumb grin on his face. That is so good.
Yeah, with "Are you man enough?
Yeah.
Big and bad enough?" No, that's when they're in the on the bus going to get the liquor. When that scene, that's when Busting Out is playing.
Right,
Um,
right, right. Oh man. That's so good.
yeah,
S-
yeah. The movie is hilarious from start to finish. There are so many small moments in this movie that shouldn't be nearly as funny as they are, but I crack up laughing at it every time. Um, my brother had never seen this movie before after I saw it. And
Yeah.
I have to imagine this movie made so much money because of word of mouth. Um, but no, I explained this movie to somebody. I explained it to my brother, and he was like, "That sounds funny." And he saw it, and he was like, "No, this is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen." And it is. I would venture to say that it's one of the funniest movies of the last 20 years.
I'll agree with that, dude. I have no problem with that at all. So, to put it into context, here's some fun math. McLovin in this movie, when he did this movie, was 18. Jonah Hill, on the other hand, was 24 when he did this movie. And let's see, Michael Cera was 19. So, not bad. Jonah Hill, way past the point of graduating high school. But
Yes.
yeah, Michael Cera and Christopher Mintz was actually right there.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. And so, again, how long ago this movie is. Christopher Mintz-Plasse is about 33 now.
He is. Yeah, you're right.
Wow.
And dude, they've all three. I mean, Jonah Hill, I guess now is considered a serious actor. Um,
Actor. Um,
actor, pardon me.
it's actor. Every time I think of that, I think of Ben Kingsley.
You're talking about
Trevor Slattery.
Trevor, yes.
I'm an actor.
What's he call the girls in Iron Man? The bird. Fancy either one of the buds, do you? Yeah. Huh?
Huh?
No?
Vanessa.
Yeah.
Here's one for Nessie.
Oh, Trevor Slattery is the best.
I will defend Iron Man 3 to my grave. Trevor Slattery forever.
Oh, we haven't. We haven't. Have we? No, we haven't. Have we?
I don't think we have, but again, I will
We're going
defend
to.
Iron Man 3 to no end. It's one of those Marvel movies that I think is overhated. By the way, I think people kind of overhate Quantumania as well. Saw it this
Yeah.
weekend. I don't get the hate.
I was. I read. I read a review, and the guy wasn't blasting it at all. But his main comment. In fact, I think Dan Slott said this on Twitter. We have done Iron Man 3, by the way. There you go. God, there's my mind. My mind's gone. Um, but Dan Slott on Twitter said that his biggest gripe was that we didn't see enough of them in the real world first because the real world grounds Ant-Man. it grounds it. And when you get into the quantum realm, it's so far out that if it had been 50-50, for him personally, he wouldn't have been as out of it as he was. I kind of get that argument. I'm kind of okay with that. But I don't hate the movie either, honestly. I saw it recently. I don't hate it at all.
Yeah, I get that argument, but I kind of think the point of the movie is that Ant-Man is out of his depth, and I think
Mm,
having him in Quantum Mania and having him in a space where he's out of his depth as a superhero and he's gone so far past what he initially was introduced as in the first movie. Um, I think that's kind of the point of the movie. He's out of his depth as a
mm,
superhero. He's out of his depth in kind of in his relationship and as a father. I think that's kind of the point we're supposed to get to it in the movie.
mm-hmm. That makes sense.
But yeah, this yeah, I mean Paul Rudd when you bring it back to Judd Apatow movies. When I think Paul Rudd, This Is 40, also very funny movie.
Mm-hmm. And was it Knocked Up? And I forget the actress that plays his wife. She's so good at is that age range of being just the cranky, like, oh, don't want to be around her. She's,
Yeah.
perfect casting.
Well,
But
well, This Is 40 is a spinoff of Knocked Up,
that's
right?
true. I forgot about that. You're right.
Because they're both the same characters from Knocked Up.
You're
Um,
right.
but no, yeah, she's great. Craig Robinson in that scene as the bouncer.
So good. It's so good.
Just her eating this guy alive with that. You're just a bouncer,
Yeah.
and he like takes it to the side. That scene is just so funny every time I
Yeah.
see it, man.
Yeah. I would tear you up, right? He's
But you
like,
just
can't
can't have you in
you
here, man. And you're pregnant, like can't be.
can't have you run around in there. That's great. Because when he tells her that she's pretty, she's hot, she's like, really? She's like so happy he tells her that.
Oh, yeah, you can't be in here. Yeah, no, yeah,
Oh, that's
really,
good
really
stuff,
funny,
man.
man. Or yeah, her and This Is 40 being like this like forever angry woman. Um, yeah. Every time I think of This 40, I think of her in the kitchen. Will you stop eating cupcakes? Stop eating cupcakes. And then by the end, she's just like screaming it. Stop eating cupcakes.
I remember it Knocked Up when he mentions like having sex or something, and she's like, I don't know, I'm real bloated or whatever, and I went to the bath, I got diarrhea or something. It's like she's like, you want to have sex? And he goes, well, now, like with that big goofy smile on his face. I've used that actually.
Yeah.
Paul Rudd is great, man.
Paul Rudd is amazing, man. He um where let's tie this back to all of our fandom. Where was Paul Rudd when she thought he was cheating on her and he disappeared for that night and she was like, well, where were you that night? And he's like, I
Yep.
went to see Spider-Man 3.
Yep.
And she's like, I want to see Spider-Man.
Yeah, I like Spider Man. He's like, well, do you want to go? We can go. She's like, well, you've already seen it. Like she's all upset.
Oh.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, kids, we could go down the Judd. We'll get it. Judd Apatow rabbit hole for the next hour and a half, or we could just say, "There's your film." So we'll say, "There's your film." There's Superbad. If you've not seen this film, more often than not, here on the 6M, we vouch for things we cover. I'm vouching for this. I think you'll be very happy with your choice if you watch this. And if you have seen this, you'll know what I'm talking about. Go see it again. I believe it holds up just well. Thank you. Um, it's a class. Would you call this film a? I mean, you said you consider it one of the funniest films of the past 10 years. So to you, it's a classic, yes?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a classic. Yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, at this point, this movie's almost 20 years old. This is it's definitely a classic.
There you go. Yeah, really good flick, kids. I'm telling you, you got to go check this out. Very much worth your time, and I'm sure we'll be talking some more Judd Apatow Got to do Pineapple Express at some point. Seth Rogen, such a good flick. Um, Good stuff here to talk about for days, actually, on end. But in the meantime, Phil, give me your last word on Superbad.
Yeah, I legitimately think this is one of the best comedy films of the past 20 years. It ages tremendously well. Um, I think that the cast of this movie is still insanely funny in this movie. There's not a weak member of this cast, and I think if you've seen them in anything else after this movie, it's very clear why these guys went on to be stars.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's well put, well said. Actually, I really like the way you said that. You're right. This film has proved these guys are extremely talented. Their comic timing. We didn't really talk enough about the comic timing. It's really really good here. I mean, the one of the closing scenes you see here is Evan carrying Seth.
I'm
He's
gonna save
like
you. I'm gonna save you.
he's like, "Are you carrying me?" So good. Or I'm sorry, Seth carrying Evan. My bad.
I'm gonna save you, Evan.
Yeah. So good. Uh, yeah, I second everything Phil said. I believe this is a movie. This movie is a classic as well. So good. Um, we'll see what happens in the future with these actors. By the way, before we wrap this up, have we ever? Because I don't know the answer to this. Have we ever seen Slater and Michaels cameo in another film together as cops?
I don't think that we have.
That seems like low hanging fruit that should happen at any time and should have happened well before now. Because I can't think if it's ever happened before. Yeah,
I don't know.
I'd be
I don't
down
think
for
that we
that.
have. I think it would be funny if they were like in the background of a movie somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Something quick where there's like a reporter on the scene. We spoke to the two officers here today, and they're both like standing there, either clueless or obviously lying about what they're telling her. That would be a great little throwaway moment. I'd be here for that. Well, there you have it, kids. They're super bad. Stay tuned for more. There will certainly be more. And as we said, more Seth Rogen stuff coming down the pike, I suspect. But in the meantime, that is super bad. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.